The year 1917 marked a turning point in the Great War. The United States, compelled by German aggression, declared war on Germany. This decision tipped the scales in favor of the Allies. The US mobilized its vast resources and manpower. Fresh American troops arrived on the Western Front. Their presence boosted Allied morale. The German High Command grew increasingly concerned. They knew that time was running out. The arrival of American troops turned the tide of the war. By November, Germany faced inevitable defeat. The war that was supposed to end all wars was nearing its end. The entry of the United States into the war placed immense strain on the Central Powers. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire were already stretched thin. Years of fighting had depleted their resources and manpower. The Allied blockade choked off vital supplies. On the home front, civilian populations faced severe shortages and hardships. Internal divisions further weakened the Central Powers. The final blow came with the Allied offensives in the fall of 1918. The German army, exhausted and demoralized, could no longer hold back the combined might of the Allied forces. Finally, on November 11, 1918, Germany signed the armistice that brought the fighting to an end. The Great War left an indelible scar on the world. Millions lay dead, victims of a conflict of unprecedented scale and brutality. The human cost was staggering. An entire generation of young men cut down in their prime left behind a void that would never be filled. Families were torn apart, their grief etched into the fabric of nations. The material destruction was equally profound. Battlefields, once fertile landscapes, were transformed into desolate wastelands. Towns and cities lay in ruins, shattered by years of bombardment. The economic toll was immense. Nations emerged from the conflict burdened by debt and struggling to rebuild their shattered economies. The war also unleashed a deadly influenza pandemic that swept across the globe, killing millions more. The Spanish flu, as it became known, found fertile ground in a world ravaged by war and weakened by hunger and deprivation. The pandemic served as a grim reminder of the interconnectedness of nations and the fragility of human life. The Great War shattered the old world order. Empires that had stood for centuries crumbled into dust. New nations emerged from the wreckage, their borders redrawn by the victors. The political landscape of Europe, and indeed the world, was forever altered. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, once a major power in Central Europe, dissolved into Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. The Ottoman Empire, long in decline, was dismantled. Its Arab provinces were placed under the control of France and Great Britain, sowing the seeds of future conflict. Russia, consumed by revolution, withdrew from the war in 1917. The Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power and established the Soviet Union. The rise of communism posed a new ideological challenge to the capitalist West. In Germany, the defeat led to the collapse of the monarchy and the establishment of the Weimar Republic. The new republic, burdened by the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, faced immense challenges in the years to come. Section 5, A Flawed Peace, the Treaty of Versailles and its legacy. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended the war between Germany and the Allied powers. However, the treaty, driven by a desire for retribution and shaped by the competing interests of the victors, proved to be a deeply flawed peace. Instead of healing the wounds of war, it sowed the seeds of future conflict. The treaty imposed harsh punishments on Germany. Germany was forced to accept sole responsibility for the war. It was stripped of territory, its military severely restricted, and made to pay heavy reparations to the victors. These punitive measures created resentment and instability in Germany, contributing to the rise of extremism in the years that followed. Moreover, the treaty failed to adequately address the underlying causes of the war. Nationalism, imperialism, and militarism, the forces that had driven Europe to the brink, were not extinguished. Instead, they festered in the aftermath of the conflict, waiting for an opportunity to re-emerge. Section 6, A League of Hope, The Quest for Lasting Peace. In the aftermath of the Great War, there was a widespread desire to prevent such a catastrophe from ever happening again. US President Woodrow Wilson a key architect of the post-war settlement, championed the creation of a League of Nations. This international organization, he believed, could provide a forum for resolving disputes peacefully and preventing future wars. The League of Nations, established in 1920, represented a bold experiment in international cooperation. Its goals were noble: to promote international cooperation, disarmament, and collective security. However, the League was hampered from the outset by several weaknesses. The United States, despite Wilson's efforts, refused to join the League. This decision, driven by isolationist sentiment in the US Congress, dealt a major blow to the League's credibility and effectiveness. Moreover, the League lacked a standing military force and had limited power to enforce its decisions. Section 7. The Seeds of Discord, Unresolved Issues and Rising Tensions. Despite the hopes for a lasting peace, the years following World War I were marked by unresolved issues and rising tensions. The Treaty of Versailles, while officially ending the war, had created new problems and exacerbated existing ones. The seeds of future conflict were sown in the ashes of the old. Germany, bitter and resentful over the terms of the treaty, sought to overturn the post-war order. The rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party in the 1930s exploited this widespread discontent. Hitler's promises to restore German glory and tear up the Dictate of Versailles resonated with a population eager for a return to greatness. In Italy, Benito Mussolini and the Fascist Party rose to power, promising to restore Roman glory and establish a new Roman Empire. Mussolini's aggressive foreign policy, aimed at expanding Italian power, further destabilized the international system. In Japan, militaristic leaders driven by expansionist ambitions sought to establish dominance in Asia. Japan's invasion of Manchuria in 1931 marked a turning point, signaling its willingness to use force to achieve its goals. Section 8. The War to End All Wars, the enduring legacy of World War I. The Great War, despite its horrors, did not usher in an era of lasting peace. Instead, it sowed the seeds of future conflict. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to prevent another global conflagration, ultimately contributed to the outbreak of World War II just 2 decades later. The War to End All Wars, as it was tragically misnamed, left an enduring legacy of violence, instability, and unresolved grievances. The war's impact extended far beyond the battlefield. It shattered empires, redrew maps, and transformed the political landscape of the world. It led to the rise of new ideologies such as communism and fascism, and fueled nationalist and anti-colonial movements across the globe. The war also had a profound impact on the lives of ordinary people. Millions died, families were torn apart, and societies were deeply scarred by the trauma of war. The war's legacy continued to shape the world for generations to come. Section 9. A generation scarred the psychological and social impact. The Great War left an indelible mark on the psyches of those who lived through it. An entire generation, known as the Lost Generation, emerged from the conflict physically and emotionally scarred. The horrors they witnessed on the battlefields left many deeply traumatized, struggling to cope with the memories of war. Shell shock, later known as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, became a common ailment among veterans. They suffered from nightmares, flashbacks, anxiety, and depression. Many turned to alcohol or drugs to numb the pain. The war also had a profound impact on social norms and values. The traditional roles of men and women were challenged as women took on new responsibilities during the war effort. The war's impact on art and literature reflected the disillusionment and despair of the post-war era. Writers like Erich Maria Remarque, with All Quiet on the Western Front, and Ernest Hemingway with A Farewell to Arms, captured the brutality of war and the psychological toll it took on those who fought in it. Section 10. Echoes of the past World War I in literature and art. The Great War had a profound impact on art and literature. The horrors of trench warfare left an indelible mark on the creative landscape. Artists and writers sought to make sense of the senseless. Erich Maria Remarque's All Quiet on the Western Front exposed the brutality of trench warfare. Ernest Hemingway captured the disillusionment of the lost generation. Artists like Otto Dix depicted the war's horrors in stark detail. Section 11. Lest we forget, remembering the Great War. A century after its outbreak, the Great War continues to resonate in the collective memory. The war serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the fragility of peace. It is essential that we remember the sacrifices made by those who fought and died. Memorials and cemeteries across Europe stand as solemn reminders of the war's enduring legacy. The battlefields of the Western Front have been transformed into places of pilgrimage. Visitors from around the world come to pay their respects and reflect on the sacrifices made.